Good evening, everybody. Hello, 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 hello. Good evening, everyone. Can anyone hear me? Can anyone hear me at all? Let me be sure. Hello, good evening. Okay, all right, all right. Thank you, Auntie Esther. How are you today? Thank you, Blessing. Thank you, Bolanli. I'm good. All right, so good evening. Welcome to the session today. We are winding down. Yeah. It's been 8 solid sessions. Seven. After today will be eight. And so it's maybe we should have an Excel party today. Yeah? Is that what we want? Yeah, I'm fine, sir. Mr. David. Yes, blessing. I'm good. Thank you. Yeah, it's a pleasure having you around, Martins. Thank you. Koyum, you want the party, right? So we're sponsoring it. Don't mention my name. Excel graduation. All right. I hope none of you is already saying that you're in SS3. You are not in SS3. So your graduation is a primary school graduation, right? Yeah. Okay. So yes, Esther. That's the deal. So today we have a couple of things to do. Just as a closing, somebody is calling Incubator up to come and sponsor again. Have they not sponsored enough? Kai, Nigerians. Jennifer, you will sponsor. That's good. That's good. So today, what we'll do is that I will try to run the session in about 90 minutes, so that we have some 30 minutes to discuss. Just answer some questions as much as we are able to answer today. So if you have questions, you should be putting them together now. So when probably around 8:25 or so, would open the floor for questions so we can continue with that till 9 o'clock. The screen is blurry. Which screen are you talking about, David? Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Okay. All right. So now, what this tells you is that your journey in data analysis is going gradually. You're progressing. You're not stagnant. A lot has happened in the space of 3 weeks, and from tomorrow you will get into the second phase where you will start your conversation around SQL, I believe. Maybe SQL, maybe Power BI, but I think it might be SQL. So let's go as usual. Everybody, go to the chat. Vera, don't be addicted to Akara. Take your time. So go to the Dorcas. You want to share a testimony? What is it? Bring it up. What has happened to you? Is Excel changing lives already? So now, everyone go to the chat as usual. Tell me something you learned in the last session. Chine, don't worry. I'll do that when we get in. Okay, don't worry. So go to the chat. Tell me what you learned in the last session. We talked about pivot tables, how to use pivot table, how to summarize large data. You have not been getting the data set for the last three classes. Sorry about that. The difference between quantitative and qualitative, thousand separation, pivot table as a summarization tool in Excel. It looks like this is the first time I'm seeing your name, Karima. Is this your first class? I learned how to summarize data, pivot table, how to condense data. Super, super. Learned how to log cell referencing. Ah, Jerry, in the last class, you were the only one that was locking. No, me, I did not lock. I learned, okay, how to summarize data. Just joining the class apart from the first. Ah, sorry about that. You must have missed a lot, a great deal, really. Or did anybody else locked? Maybe you were with Jerry in the last class, but in our own class we did not lock. The use of function to get your results. Function K. Pivot table, categorical and aggregation. What does that mean for you? Pivot tables and how to apply it. Bolanle, no. Okay. You were not with Jerry. That's nice. Lock. Okay, Alimatu. Nah, that's good. Filters, values, columns, and rows. Esther, yes, that's cool. Those are the buckets that you have on the pivot table, and that's what will define what you would see eventually on the pivot table. Top and bottom, Canon, yeah. Is it Canaan or Canon? Maybe I didn't pronounce it. I probably pronounced it like Cannon by the boy. Sorry about that. How to filter in pivot table, yeah, super. Where when they see this log from? Sorry, Victoria, you were not part of the. You were in our own class, Victoria, I believe. You learned how to use pivot table. Super. So now let's go on. Let's go on today. Let's quickly proceed. We had an introduction to pivot tables in the last class, and we looked at a couple of things already. So today we want to step it a bit up. Want to step it a bit up today, and not necessarily creating anything too complicated, but we want to see a few more things that you need to know about pivot tables. After which, we will now go into how you can turn all of what you've done into a sort of what some people will call a dashboard and what some of us will call a report. So, in the last class, we went through a couple of scenarios. We went through a couple of scenarios. And for those of you that you were in the class with me, that you were not in Jerry's class, you probably would have seen that whenever you are creating a pivot table, whenever you are creating a pivot table, the default calculation that happens on your pivot table is sum. And that is why for all of the pivot tables that we have created so far, you'll see that the column that we dropped on the values bucket would always say sum of that particular column. So for this case, it says sum of revenue. This one, it says sum of units sold. This one, it says sum of revenue. All right. So, but for pivot tables, you don't necessarily have to do the sum every time. In fact, there are certain times that the kind of aggregation that you want is not sum. Maybe you want an average, maybe you want a max, maybe you want a mean, maybe you want to do a count. So, depending on the kind of aggregation that you want to do. So the way to alter that is within the pivot table itself, and it's just somewhere that we'll get to in a moment. So let's do something for now. So I'll try to create a new pivot table. I'm just gonna drop it here. So I'll pick this guy, I'll pull this here. If you have any question, please hold on to it till when it's time for questions. All right. So I already mentioned it. Just hold your question. We'll have a bit more ample time to attend to questions now. Whatever you drop at this time, I get lost in the chat. So don't blame yourself if you do not get responses to your question. So I want to create a report of our model by revenue. So this is the report of model by revenue, and this tells us that in each of the model, This is the amount that we actually realized. And at a glance, you can already see that in the model 3002P, we realized 26 billion, and that seemed to be our best selling model. So, one thing you would have seen here is that the calculation is still the sum. But let's assume that I want a different calculation. I don't want to use the sum. I want a different calculation. Maybe I want to see how much is the average, or what is the average revenue that we are making in each of these models or the model lines. What is the average revenue? We have seen what we made as the total revenue, but now we want to see what is the average revenue that we are making in each of these model lines. Interestingly, we also would like to see to retain this revenue, this total column. So you know that this column is what gives us the total revenue. So what that means is that we want to add a second column to this existing pivot table that would show us the average revenue that we are making in each of these business model lines. How do we go on to achieve that? That is the question. If I come here If I come here and I check the revenue column again, you see that my revenue actually goes off. So which means you only have the opportunity to check the box once for it to appear on your pivot table. So let me pull this on silence. Okay. So if you want to bring in the same column more than once on your pivot table, this is the trick. If you want to bring in the same column more than once on your pivot table, when you check the box the first time, then you want it to come in the second time, what you would do is now to drag that column. So you take your cursor, your mouse to it like this, you drag it. If you're looking at my screen, you see that something already followed my mouse. I'll just take it down and I'll go and drop it again in the values bucket. When I drop it again in the values bucket, you'll see now that we have the column again, the same column again coming in, and now it says that the heading is sum of revenue 2. The 2 that you see there already informs you that you have the same column already existing, and this is the second time that you're bringing in that particular column. If you need it one more time, you can go here again and you pick it, drag it, and go drop it again in the values bucket. And now you see that we have it coming up thrice. Now, let's now start with this one in the middle. We want to change the calculation here for the column in the middle. Rather than it showing the total, we want it to show the average revenue. So what you would do is to go to any of the numbers. Just go to any of the numbers and do a right click. You go to any of the numbers and you do a right click. When you do a right click, you come here to this guide that says summarize values by. You see the guide that says summarize values by, and then for summarize values by, you see that we have different options. You can either have the calculation to run by a sum, or you have the calculation run as a count, or average, max, mean, product, and a few more options. So what this will mean is that you have the choice to select any of these calculations, and based on that calculation, you will see the result on your pivot table. And you see that the sum is the one that is checked. It is checked, and this also tells you that the default calculation that always happen is the sum. So now, let's say that, as we have said, that we want to change the calculation to an average. So I'm just going to come down here to average, I'll click, and almost immediately you see that this calculation now changes to an average, and this tells you that the average revenue that we made in any of this business line is what you see here. And that the 4500C, which is one of our models, that is the model that has the highest average revenue per transaction. So probably means that many people would normally buy the 4500C. So we do lots and lots of that product in a single transaction. So this is how you're going to change the calculation on any of your pivot tables. Again, you click on any of the numbers, you do a right click, you come here to summarize values by, and then you select the kind of calculation that you want to run over the particular column. Now, there are still a few more kinds of calculations that you can do. So your calculations are not limited to just you dropping the columns alone. You can play a lot with those columns such that you get a bit better insight as to what is happening within your data. So let's see something. One of the calculations that you can do on a pivot table is to say that for each of our revenues here, each of our revenue figures, we want to know what percentage is this particular amount when we compare it to the grand total. What percentage is this amount when we compare it to the grand total? What advantage would that give to us? That would make us know which of the business line or which of the models is giving us the most percentage out of the entire revenue. By that, we probably would know that maybe two or three of our models are giving us maybe 50% of the entire revenue that we are getting within our business. So let's try something. So I can come here again, and whenever you want to alter what you see on your pivot table, one of the very key things that you can try is to do a right click. There are a couple of magic that can happen when you do a right click. So when I do a right click like this on the column, a cell within the column wherein I want to alter that particular calculation, I can come down here to summarize values by. That was where we went to the other time, but this time I'll come here to show values as. When you come to show values as, you see here that you have a number of options. The default here is that your numbers appear on the pivot table exactly how it's coming from the data set. There are no alterations, there are no calculations. But now, rather than displaying the exact number as it is from the data set, we want to sort of perform a calculation over this so that we can begin to now make more sense of what is happening within our data. So I can come here to say that the kind of calculation that I want is a percentage of grand total. What that would mean is that it will pick each of these numbers and compare it to the grand total and tell us that this 77.5 billion is actually maybe like 9% of the grand total. And that tells you that in model 2500C, the entire revenue that we got was just 9% of the entire revenue. So let's go back. You right click on the cell, go to show values as, and select percentage of grand total. If I do that, you see now the calculation ran, and we can see here that in model 2500C, what we realized there, it's really 10% of everything that we made in that particular business. And our best-selling model 3002P actually gave us a whopping 35% of our revenue. And that way you can see that just 3200P as well as 4500P, the two models alone has given us more than 50% of our revenue. More than 50% of our revenue came from just two model lines. What I would tell you is these probably are some models that we need to ensure that does not go out of stock. So we need to focus on it positively. And then for a model like 4000 or 4055T, which only gave us 1.6% of our entire revenue, maybe that tells you that this model, maybe we want to close out on selling that. We might be spending so much more to sustain the model line than what we are realizing from this. Please explain the percentage again. Good. So what you do is, if I do Ctrl Z to go back, so this is what we have. You do a right click on any cell within that column. You do a right click on any cell within that column. I right click and then you come here to show values as. Come here to show values as. When you come here to this, then you see a couple of options, but the one that we are using now is the percentage of grand total. So I select percentage of grand total and we come down to this, which I've just explained. If what we've done so far is clear to you, type clear on the chat. All right, super. Clear, good. But you need to practice. Yes, I believe. So, why didn't the column heading of the percentage change like that of average? Good question. So whenever you are doing this, so if I do a right click and I come here to show summarize values by, the heading that you see is actually tied to this, guys. So whatever you select here, if for whatever reason I change this to mean, you see that my heading will change. So the heading is tied to how or what data summary that you're using. The heading is tied to the data summary options that you're using. But whenever you come here to show values as, you are performing a calculation on that particular column. So the way this was programmed, this would not change the heading. But maybe a stretch to your question would now be that, is it possible for you to now change the heading? Absolutely. So this one that shows sum of revenue 3, we can now say that this is percentage of total. Hit enter and you would be able to change that heading. Yes, Cynthia, you can change the heading and that's what I just did. All right. So that is how this works. So I leave you to explore, but you know that if you want to change the base some aggregation from sum to whatever, you need to come here to summarize values by, and whenever you want to perform some kind of calculations, you please, how do we duplicate the revenue in values? Just drag it. So I'll show values as, this is where you perform some calculations. All right. If for whatever reason, let me try to do something. So let's say that as we have this, I want to add, let me include the trade date on the rows. So then I want to only retain the years. So I'm going to take out quarter, I take out trade date. Okay. So look at this now, for example. So I'll just format these numbers. So look at this, for example. Now I dropped the year. I took the year again in the rows. So what this shows you now is that on column M, we actually have two categories here. We have the date category and we have the models. And now we have a split. So for 2014, this is the total, and this is how much we realized in each of the models within that particular year. And again, the percentage of total, you see that this is what we did in that particular year. Okay, if for whatever reason you now want to change the outlook of your pivot table, you want to sort of change how your pivot table appears, then you have a couple of options. One option is to come here to the top. Remember that in our first class, I told you that the home that you see here is a tab, insert is a tab, and the likes like that. But these two guys that you see here, pivot table analyze and design, you will see that they are not a regular tab for you. They are not a regular tab for you. Okay? If I click on any cell, if I click on any cell out of the pivot table, if I click here, you see that those two extra tabs will go off. And those two tabs will always come up when you are in a pivot table. Any tab that behaves that way, which only appears by virtue of the objects that you're using in Excel, is called a contextual tab. A contextual tab is a tab that appears or goes off depending on what you're doing in Excel. But all the tabs, they are your regular tabs, regardless of what you do or what you don't do, you get to always see them in Excel. So I click again on the pivot table, and now you see that I have two extra tabs. Depending on your version of Excel again, it's not tab. Mr. Gbenga, are you from my town? So pivot table analyze, okay? Pivot table analyze will be what some of you would see depending on your version, and for some of you, you would see just analyze. That's what you see here. All right. And then we have design. So now if I come here to design, maybe some of you have explored this already. Thank you, Mr. Gbenga. Maybe some of you have explored this already. You can use this to change the look and feel of your pivot table. I don't like it being too colorful. It is just me, maybe because I'm a guy. So I somehow most times would prefer it just to be plain, like so. But it's really up to you. You may want to do whatever you want to do. So long as the business, they are fine with it. Okay. So, but beyond the fact that you can change the colors of your pivot table here, then you have a few more options here. These are the guys I want to talk about. These guys that you see here in the layout group. So these guys that you see in the layout group, they are the ones that control what you see on your pivot table. Let me do something. Let me try to hide these guys so that we can have a bit more room for those guys to come on board. So if I do Control 0, and then we are back here. So if I click here, I go into the design tab. So now what you see, so at the bottom here, this is where you see the grand total. Okay. You like yours in Akara color. I don't know the color of Akara. So the grand total that you see here, depending, sometimes you don't necessarily want to show the total. Okay. If you don't want to show the grand total, you can come here. After you must have clicked on the design tab, you come here to the grand totals button. If you click on the grand totals, then you can see that we have a couple of options. Do you want to put it off for rows and columns? Do you want to put it on for rows and columns? Do you want to put it on for rows alone or for columns alone? So if I say that you should put it off for rows and column, I click. Now you see that the grand total row is gone. So if you need it to come back, you just go back, click within your pivot table, go back to design, come back to grand total, and then you can say that you should put it on. And once you do that, you realize that the guy is back here. So now the subtotal is what you see here, where you have the split. So 2014, this amount is the subtotal. That's the amount that we made in 2014. This amount for 2015, that is the subtotal. That is the amount that we made in 2015. What you see below, grand total, is the total for all of them. So now, if we want to, for whatever reason, maybe switch off this subtotal, you come here to subtotals and you say do not show subtotal. A lot of things in Excel is quite intuitive. You just need to find where it is, all right? So if I click on do not show subtotals, you see that the subtotals are now off for both 2014 and 2015. You may also want to bring it back up. So you may want to bring it up, but you don't want to show it here. You want it to be at the bottom. So you come here to subtotal and you say shows all subtotals at bottom of group. If I click on this, you see now that the subtotal has now jumped to the bottom of the group. Maybe that's how you want people to consume the report. You want them to see the individual numbers first before they now go on to see what the subtotal is for that group. The other option you have here is about the layout, which is what you see with this guy, report layout. So for report layout, you can actually change how this looks, especially the fact that you have two items in the same column. You have the year in the column as well as the models. If you want to separate them, you want the years to have its own column and the model to have its own column, thereby expanding this table. What you need to do is to come here back to design, go to report layout, and then you can say that. So for now it is in compact form. That is why it's put two columns in this, two categories in the same column. But if I say that it should show in outline or it should show in tabular, if I choose tabular for example, you see now that the year is in its own column and the model has its own column. Okay, so this is how you can begin to play around with your pivot table. Are we good, everybody? If you're good, type good on the chat for me. Don't worry. I see some questions coming in. Just keep dropping them or keep them with you. Thank you to my bosses at the back end. They're trying to pick some of the questions. We'll have just about 40 minutes more to discuss, and then we go into the questions. Guys, focus. All right? Focus. Don't lose focus. You are here to learn. Don't be distracted. Don't be distracted. If you feel that the chat is distracting you, you may actually, I don't know if it's possible to put the chat off for you so that you can focus on the class and you don't have to you don't get people to distract you. So if you have questions, drop your questions. All right. So now let's assume that this is all we want to build out of our pivot table. And we want to now begin to turn this into a dashboard or into a report. How do we begin this? Super simple, but you just need to get the idea. So once you get the idea, I will leave you to go flesh it out yourself. Like it's always said, if we continue Excel for the entire period of this program, you will still not learn everything. So classrooms are supposed to give you foundational knowledge so you can sit comfortably on the tool, not necessarily to show you everything, because in fact, there is no trainer that can show you everything that you need to know about something. A lot of the other things that you need to know beyond the foundation, beyond the fundamentals, you will need to figure them out when you get to those bridges. So you try to cross them. And that is why you have Google. That is why you have ChatGPT, you have Cloud, you have what other AI tool do you have today? How to unhide. Just click on the cell, on the columns, do a right click. You see unhide if you have hidden something. So now, when you want to turn your report into a dashboard, you want to turn your report into a dashboard. Recommended practice is that you should put that on a different worksheet. Remember that now, excuse me, what do I have here? Okay. Remember that now we have our data on a worksheet. You have your pivot tables on another worksheet. So I can name this pivot tables. And then this last one, I can call this my dashboard. So now the arrangement doesn't matter. So I can decide to just put it this way. My pivot table comes here, my dashboard is here. Okay. So on this now, so I'm just going to clean this out, take this out. One of the first things that I do whenever I want to build out a dashboard in Excel is I don't like to see these ugly guys. They are called grid lines. I don't like to see them. So I try to take them off so that my Excel looks less like an Excel. Yeah, if you understand what I mean. So how do I turn that off? You can go here to the view tab. You can go here to the view tab. And once you're on the view tab, you see these guys here in the show group. This is the guy that controls what you see and what you do not see. If you check off the formula bar button, you see that your formula bar is off. If you check off your header button, you see that all of the columns and the rows, they are off. If you check off the grid lines, you see now that we have a clean slate. So which is how I actually like the platform to be, like the background to be for my dashboard. So now, let me try to take this guy out. Don't know why it's here. Okay, so the first thing that we'll do is this. Let's try to give our dashboard a header. So we want to give it a header. So anybody looking at it, they sort of will have an idea that, okay, this dashboard is a sales dashboard, it's a procurement dashboard, it's a marketing analysis, whatever you want to call it, so long as it ties to what the dashboard is about. So if I come here to insert, can come here to insert, and then I come here to shapes, I click, then I can select this rectangle guy. If I select the rectangle, I can do something like this. Just pick it from here and just draw this out slightly. Something like this. what I can do with this, guys, is to just highlight it and reduce the size slightly. Okay. For this rectangle, you can format it however you want it. I'm not so good at that, so I can come here to shape format, but I'll just tell you where you find it. You have a couple of options here if you want to use any of the style presets, so you can use any of these. Alternatively, you can come here to the shape fill and choose the actual fill that you want. Red is bad, so I'll not use red. So maybe something like this, something so subtle. And then for the outline, I can clean out the outline. Say no outline. And while your banner is selected, I can type the name of the dashboard. So I say maybe this is sales dashboard, something like that. Adebola, explain again what? Be precise. If you don't understand something, be very specific as to what I should. Don't I've seen a couple of people saying come again. Come again with what exactly? So you have to be very specific. You have to be precise about what you want. Akara red, peace, peace, peace. How many times did I call you? How do I remove the pivot table on this worksheet? What you do, just highlight the columns that has the pivot table like this. Just ensure that the number of columns you highlighted already covers the entire pivot table, and press Ctrl minus. Press Ctrl minus, that will take it out. So Ctrl minus is a shortcut to take out columns. This is confusing. All right. How did you remove the pivot table? I just explained. How to create the heading for the dashboard. Let's do it again together. If you don't get it now, forget about it. So you come here to insert. You come here to insert. You go to shapes, drop down on shapes, select rectangle or whatever shape you want, up to you. I would select rectangle and then I'll just draw it out like so. After then, while having the shape selected, at the top you see a shape format contextual tab. So I'm going to click on that guy and then I come here to shape fill. You select the color of your choice. So for me, I selected this color, which somebody called blue, but Excel is saying that it is dark blue. So I select that and I went to turn off the shape outline. And you click on this, shape selected, and you can type in the name of your dashboard, sales dashboard, like so. So let's try to make this our text bigger. So what you would do, you will have to rewatch. It's okay. It's okay, yeah? So we have this shape here. You can come here to the home tab and here that you see the font. So you can increase the font size by just clicking on this guy, or you select the actual font size that you want. So I increase the font size like so, and then I can come here to make it bold. I come here to make it bold. Then I come again to the alignment group and I say that This should be aligned to the center. You would have excellence, you would have shapes. So when you get to insert, go to illustrations, drop down. Within illustrations, you will see shapes. It's not possible that you don't have shapes. Not possible. So if you have your banner, go to the chart and type banner. Super. So we can now start to build out our dashboard. So the idea of a dashboard, learn this and learn it well. Get a point now. At what point do we use pivot table? Really? What does your question mean? I asked you to type banner. Somebody type banana. Hey, you people. Can you use Control Shift greater than size to enlarge a font in Excel? Control Shift. I know there's a shortcut for it, but let me try. Is it Control Shift? Let me see. Yeah, I think it's Control Shift greater than. You're correct. You're correct. Somebody's asking which banner. Don't worry. You didn't see shapes under insert. Sorry, love it. It was explained earlier. You missed that again, probably. All right, good. So now, once we have this, so I was trying to explain the idea of a dashboard. A dashboard. So think about it like the dashboard of a car. What does the dashboard of a car tell you? When you are looking at the dashboard of a car, what information do you get from it? What does the dashboard of a car tell you? Or nobody has seen that before. You have observed that. Thank you, Dari. Miles per hour. Good. Emmanuel, it tells you the speed, the time, the fuel consumption. Control system of the car. Good. Speed rate, oil level. Does the dashboard tell you the oil level? Maybe if it flags it when your oil is low, maybe. Temperature, excellent. All right. So, gear notification, speed limit, odometer. Okay, I have a lot of mechanics in this class. Super mechanics. Five-star mechanics. Excellent. Passenger door open. Interesting. Tire indicator. Excellent. The point is, the dashboard of a car does not tell you everything about the car. Grace, that's interesting. You must be a mechanic, Grace. Confirm that to me. The dashboard of a car does not tell you everything about the car. For example, does the dashboard of a car tell you if the trunk is opened? Does the dashboard of a car tell you if the what's it called? The panoramic roof, if it's opened? The dashboard of a car may not necessarily tell you if your fuel pump is faulty or if it's about to be faulty. So there are certain information that the dashboard of a car would not tell you. But the dashboard of a car will tell you what is most important about the car. What are the things that needs to be fine for the car to work or to move properly? That is what the dashboard of a car is going to do for you. So it's not necessarily telling you everything about the car, but it's telling you the most important things about the car for it to function, for it to move, for it to serve the purpose for which it was built. So the same way is how you should see dashboards in reporting or in analysis. When you are analyzing data, your dashboard should not necessarily show you every single thing that you have found. You don't have to put every single thing that you found on your analysis dashboard. No. What should be there are the most important things to the business. What are the things that you want the stakeholders to see that would interestingly fuel their decisions? So that is what you should have in mind when you are building a dashboard. So it's possible that, like in our case, you have maybe like 50 pivot tables, for example. You don't need to bring all 50 onto your dashboard. No. Maybe from the 50, maybe what is really, really, really important and useful will be just five. Every other things, there are more explorations for you. There are things that have given you some information about the data so that you understand it better, but there are other ones that are much more important that will give you better information as to what is happening within your data. Those are the ones that you should focus and bring in onto your dashboard. Are we making sense? All right. So I think we should take a pause now, so you can fill out the your attendance form and everything. And so when we're back in like 30 minutes, 20 minutes, 25 minutes thereabouts, we build out something, and I would then begin to answer questions. I see we have a few questions already. Other questions, you can bring them on board so we answer them all together. All right, so we connect back in like 5 minutes. Go ahead to take your attendance or complete your attendance now, everyone. All right. So break is over. Break is over. If you're back here, please type back on the chat for me. And if you want to buy Akara, you're hearing this on your way back, let me also know on the chat. Akara, don't finish, Charles. Sorry, you missed your timing. Sorry, Charles. Hmm? On your way back from getting water. Okay, that's good. You didn't get water when you were eating your Akara. That's not good enough. All right, so now, Paul, you're watching match, and you can still tell me that you're watching match in my class. Maybe I should ask you to face the wall and raise your hand. Okay, so now we are ready. We have prepared where we want to bring our dashboard on. So we just need to go back. Watermelon, okay. So we just need to go back to our pivot tables. And let's assume that this pivot table that shows our revenue by the region is the first one that we want to take onto the dashboard. Sorry, Favor, you can catch up with the recording. So once you click on any pivot table and you want to turn the pivot table into a chart, you can press Alt F1 on your keyboard. You use the Alt key and F1, press Alt F1 on your keyboard. Iyanu, I'm coming for you. You press Alt F1 on your keyboard and that gives you a chart. The chart is feeding off the data on the pivot table. So it's your pivot table that has given birth to this chart. I go again. You click anywhere on the pivot table that you want to turn into a chart. You press Alt F1. You press Alt F1 so you get a chart. When you get a chart like this, then we can clean this up slightly. How do I mean clean this up? What we can do is you see around your chart that you have a few buttons. So these guys here are buttons. We don't need them. So what you can do is you go to any of the buttons. Region here is a button. This region is a button. This is another button here. So you go to any of the buttons and you do a right click. Go to any of the buttons and you do a right click. When you do a right click, you see that you have an option to hide all field buttons on chart. Hide all field buttons on chart. If your Alt F1 is increasing the volume, you need to use Alt FN F1. Alt FN F1. You want a shortcut for buying Akara. You need to discuss that with the Akara seller. So if your Alt F1 is not working, you need to use Alt FN F1. So you come to any of the buttons like this, you say you right click and then you see an option to hide all field buttons on chart. Once I click on this option, you see that those buttons go off. Those buttons would go off. Those buttons would go off. So now, those buttons are off. Our chart is the way it is, but it's not fully clean yet. If you look at these lines here, these lines, sorry, don't mind my drawing. I ran away from technical drawing class. So if you see these lines here, these lines are called grid lines. They are like the grid lines that we took off in Excel. So we can take them off here as well because they are not serving any purpose. So I can click on any of the lines, the ones in the middle. So you click on anyone in the middle. If you try to click on anyone on the edges, it will do something else. So to select, you need to click on anyone in the middle. Once you have them all selected like the ones, you click on one, you see that all of them will be selected. Then you can press delete on your keyboard. You can press delete on your keyboard. You can't find your pivot table, they were hidden with Control 0. Highlight the columns around where your pivot tables are supposed to be. Once you've highlighted those columns, right click. When you right click, at the bottom, you'll see the option to unhide columns. At the bottom, you'll see the option to unhide. So you can use that. Miracle, miracle. What did you just say here? Okay, so we have this here. So our chart is looking cleaner. Then we have this guy at the right side. So this guy is called a legend. So what legends are for, they are supposed to describe the different values or quantitative elements that you have in your chart, just so that you know that this color is for this color is for that. But whenever we are visualizing a single thing, there's no reason why you should keep your legend because we don't have multiple colors. So it's just one color that we have here, so we don't need to keep it. So you can click on the legend like so, and you press delete on your keyboard. All right. Now let's go to the title. We want the title to be a lot more descriptive. So we can say that this is the chart that is showing revenue by region. It's showing the revenue by the regions. So what information do you need about the chart? Fi plus F1. What does that mean, Femi? It's Fn. Fn. Yes. We are coming to that favor. So now, this is what you see on the chart now. But you see the numbers here, having those too many zeros make no sense. Alternatively, we can actually decide that we want to put the values, we want to put the numbers at the top of the columns so that anybody looking at the height of the column, they will already know that this particular column has this number. So what we may want to do here is we can actually take out this y-axis completely. So if you select it and you press delete on your keyboard, your chart is a lot cleaner. All right. And then you can now come here to this guy here. If your chart is selected, you will see a plus sign just at the top right. You'll see a plus sign just at the top right. That plus sign, if you click on it, you can actually use it to control everything that we have removed. You want to remove the legend. If you see that your legend was checked, if you uncheck it, it goes off. But we want to bring in the data label. That is what will put the values at the top. So if I check the box for data label, you see now that we have the values right at the top. We have the values right at the top. Now, We have the values at the top of our columns, but it doesn't fully make sense. It's just a bit clumsy. See how long this is. So we can rewrite it in a way that it will make better sense. And that will make me to want to introduce to you a concept called custom formatting. So we have what is called custom formatting in Excel. So custom formatting is a way of formatting what you see in Excel, maybe numbers, maybe text, just as you would want it to appear. So you want to format it exactly how you want to see it appear. I don't want to go into too much details about that, but let's use that principle to format our numbers here. What I would want to do is, instead of seeing 6,489,000,000 blah 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 here, what I want to see here is 6BN. And when it gets here, or maybe 6 point, let's say 6.49BN. That's what we have here. And when it gets here, it should show us this should be 73.03BN. So that is the formatting that we want to apply. How do you go about that? How do you go about that? What you need to do is to highlight all your numbers like so. Highlight the numbers that you want to apply that formatting to. Highlight the numbers that you want to apply that formatting to. Once you have the number highlighted, you press Ctrl 1. Press Ctrl 1. Excuse me, for me, because I have something up, that's why it didn't come up. So, but Ctrl 1 should work for you guys. So my zoom feature is what is making my Ctrl 1 to do something else. So if you do Ctrl 1, it takes you to number format. That's the shortcut. It takes you to the number format. It takes you to the number format. When you get to the number format, what we actually want to do is to come down here to this guy that says custom. We come down to that guy that says custom. So by custom format, what we're trying to do is to define how this our number should appear. We want to define how it should appear. And what you see here is the code that Excel uses to format the original number that didn't have commas, that didn't have the decimal point. This is the code that Excel used to now format it this way. Do you need to learn the codes? Maybe not necessarily for now, but the more you work with it, you would understand the code and you will know what the code is actually doing. So what I will teach you today is an introduction into the world of custom formatting. So there are a lot of magic that you can do with custom formatting. So what I would do now is this. I will come here into this code. That's the box under type. I'll come in here and I will wipe it out. What you would have seen is that immediately I wiped it out, you see that my sample went back to how it was, which was the original format that we got. No comma separator, no thousand separator, no decimal point. This was the original thing that we started with. And I got that immediately I wiped out the code in the type box. When you want to format your numbers, the placeholder that stands for numbers is one of two. You can either use the pound sign or you use 0. You either use the pound sign, that's a placeholder that stands for numbers, or you use 0. If I want the number that you see here to have thousand separator, if I want the number that you see here to have thousand separator, what I will just do is I'll put pound sign, comma, pound sign, pound sign. You see that immediately I typed pound sign, comma, pound sign, pound sign. What I've told Excel is that it should go ahead to format the number that it sees to have a thousand separator. Now, if I want this number to have decimal points, I'll just put a dot after the second pound sign, and then I'll put the number of decimal points. The placeholder will now be zeros. So if I put 10, it means that the numbers would have one decimal point. If I put another zero, I increase the decimal points by 10. Another, you see that it keeps increasing it that way. So the format to get thousand separator, you do, this is the original number, you do pound sign, comma, pound sign, pound sign. If I want decimal point, I'll put dots, 0, 0 for two decimal places. And as you're doing it, just keep your eyes on the sample. You will see immediately what the code will translate to on your sample. Once I have this, but I want to format this number. I know that this number is running into billions. So I want to format it such that it writes 6.49 billion. Then what you would do at this point, this is the trick. So the trick to cut down this number from having about 10 digits to having just 3 or 4, cutting down the thousand, the million, the billion from this number is by coming behind everything that you've typed here so far. If you put a comma, that reduces your numbers by 3 digits. If you put a comma, it reduces your numbers by 3 digits. If you put another comma, it takes away another 3 digits. If you put another comma, it takes away another 3 digits. When you have this, if you look at what we have in our sample now, this just shows 6.49. It shows 6.49. And now I can go on to now type BN. I will need to put that in double quotes, BN, and now I have 6.49 billion. Don't worry, let me click on OK. You see the result first, and then I can go back to now do it one more time. So focus now. So this is where we're coming to, which is instead of that long number that we saw earlier, we've been able to now format it in a way that it appears nicely, neatly, and now we see 6 billion and 73 billion here. How did I get to that? This is where we were. So I do Control 1 after you've highlighted your numbers to go into number formatting. So I come here, I go to number format. Not necessarily rounding up. So I will show you what happened. If I come here to custom, I'm overshooting my time already. So I will stop this, all of this conversation, I should stop it by 8:30. So we have maybe more than 10 questions already. So now I come here, I wipe out everything that's here. Again, you don't have to get everything now. That's why the recordings are there. So don't feel bad. Don't feel bad if you're missing some points. It's understandable. For some people, you may have to watch it maybe twice for you to properly get what has been done. But when you get the hang of it, you will love it. So if I wipe out what is there, I told you that if I want to format this number to have thousand separator, I'll just need to put the pound sign, comma, pound sign, pound sign. You see that this already gives us the thousand separator, which is the first step. I put a dot. I put 1020 because I want to get out decimal points. Then this is where the work is now, which is we don't want this number to appear the way it is. So I'll need to now find a way to reduce these numbers, the digits, so that we can truncate some part of it. The guy that will do that trick is the comma. If I put one comma here, if I put a comma here, it chalks off 3 digits. If I put a second comma, it takes another 3 digits. It's just by way of you saying that remember that it was in primary school where we were taught significant figures. So when they will say that you should convert a number to two significant figures and you start shifting the decimal point, it is exactly the same thing that this guy is doing. So initially we'll pick the decimal point from here and it takes it 1, 2, 3. That's the first comma that you put. A second comma, 1, 2, 3, takes off another. So the decimal point will be here now, somewhere here. And then when you add another comma, that's the third one, they now shift states 1, 2, 3 again, and the decimal point will now be just after 6. So by using 3 commas, you've shifted the decimal point 3 times. And that is what will now give us the number in billion. So if you need to format it in million, it means you will need 2 commas. If you want to format it in thousand, you will need just 1 comma. If you want to go beyond billions, you need the number of commas. But just know that 1 comma will shift the decimal places by 3, so you sort of will chop off 3 digits. So now, if I come here, I put 1 comma, 2, 3. Here we are. Then because I want to write a text alongside this, so I'll put this, a double quote, BN, a double quote here. So I do that, and then I have what I see here. Then I click on OK. So now that we have this, but let me show you what's happening with formatting. We have a maxim that says that if formatting does not change what is inside a cell. What is in this cell is not this 6.49 billion. The actual number is still there. How would you know? If I go back to bring up my formula bar and you look at my formula bar, you see that behind the 6.49 billion that you see, this is still the number that is there. So just hold that in mind, that when you format, when you apply this kind of formatting, it doesn't change the underlying data. Rather, it just changes how that appears. That's what formatting does. Now, immediately we were able to format our numbers. You see that the numbers on the chart now appear nicely. So I can now copy this chart, or I cut it using Control X. If I do Control X to cut it, I can now go on the dashboard. I go on the dashboard and then I can now come somewhere here and I do Control V. So I do Control V to paste it here. All right. So I have it here. So I have one interesting chart here. So let's say I need another one. So let me just try to reduce the size of this guy. So let me quickly bring in one more. So I come here to pivot tables. Let's say I need this one. Alt F1 again. Alt F1. That gives me this. I'll take out all the guys that I don't need. So take out the grid lines, take out legend, axis. I want to take out the primary vertical. I want to take out the buttons. So I have this. I want to add data labels. I have this. And for the data labels, I want to take out the decimal points. So I just come here and I say reduce decimal points for all of these guys. All right, so this is what I have. So I'll just rename the title. I'll call this um, unit sold, unit sold, unit sold by John. All right, so I can pick this guy, Control X, and I go here to the dashboard and I put the guy here. So I put the guy here. Now I have two charts on my dashboard. So with this is how you continue on your dashboard. So let me now show you the last thing so that we make this some sort of complete solution. The last thing. So when we started our conversation around the pivot tables, I told you that the pivot table, the pivot table, the filter bucket there has a better alternative. So which is what is called a slicer. So how do we insert a slicer? So let's say I click on this chart here. I click on this chart and I come here to pivot chart analyze. I come here to pivot chart analyze. And then I come here to this guy that says insert slicer. I'll select insert slicer. Select insert slicer. So it gives you this window here to select what column do you want to use on your slicer. Let's say we want to use the line of business on the slicer. So I just check the box for line of business and then I do OK. Now, this gives me a slicer like this. So just for uniformity, maybe I want to try to pick a color that is close to my dashboard color. So I can pick this color. Maybe this is OK. And then for this chart, maybe I can go on to say that I want to use this font, and this one, I want to use this view. So now, this slicer that you see here now, I want to put it at the top here. I want to put it at the top here. But you know that because of how it is now, it will not sit there properly. So what I would do is just to play around with the formatting. So you can select the slicer like this, and you go to the slicer tab. If I go to the slicer tab, and then I'll come here. So let me show you what's happening. So if I bring the slicer here, if I come here to columns, so this guy here, columns, the columns option is what controls the number of columns that you see on your slicer. You see now that we have all of the items on a single column. That's because this guy is set to 1. If I come here, I increase this guy to 2. You see that we have 2 columns now. I increase it to 3. We have 3 columns. So if you want to flatten it out, just ensure that the number of columns you give to it is the same number of items that you have here. So if I go 4, I'll flatten this out. Then I can expand this like this. Can expand it like this. And then I can attempt to now fit it into this. But it still does not sit in there properly. So the last thing I can do is to come here to slicer setting. If I come here to slicer setting, I can say that it should not show the display name. So if I check that box and I do OK, now I have little more room. I can lessen the size, can take this guy to the right, just bring this guy slightly, and we are good. So we now have something that looks better, like so. And what does the slicer do? So what it does is we can now select any of the items here, and we'll see the actual revenue that we made within the line of business in each of our regions. So if I select copy sale, you see now that it filters the chart, and now we are seeing the revenue that ties to copy sales. If I click on part, it filters the chart. If I click on printer sale, it filters the chart. Service plan filters the chart. But if probably you have seen this closely, you will notice that anything I'm selecting is only affecting the chart on the left. That was because the chart on the left was what I actually selected while I was creating that slicer. How can you connect this slicer to all of your charts? So whatever you select on the chart, on the slicer, filters all your charts. It's simple. Just select your slicer, go here to the slicer tab, and then you see this guy here called report connections. See the definition. It says that it manages which pivot tables the slicer is connected to. So if I click on report connection, this will give you the list of all of the pivot tables that you have on your report. And the slicer, the pivot table that the slicer is connected to is the one that is checked. So I can just select other pivot tables like this. I select every other one. I click on OK. And now whatever I'm selecting here would filter my entire dashboard. So yeah, if I have 5 charts here, when I select anything here, it filters my entire report. So I think this is good enough. Like I said, you can't learn everything. But maybe one last important thing is that what happens when your data updates. Let's say that you have new records on your data. You made new sales. So I'll just try to duplicate this. But for this one, let's make the unit sold ridiculously high so that we can see the impact. So I will say, let me give this like this number. When you have your data updates, if you go to your pivot tables or your dashboard, you will not see the update immediately. You will not see the update immediately. So what you might want to do, there's a way to see it immediately though, but it's beyond your level. So what you would do is that once you've updated your data, just come here to data, come here to data tab and click on refresh all. So if I click on refresh all, let's see where that unit sold will come to. So the unit sold I expect it to come somewhere. Let me see. Uh, where did we add it to? Okay, so it's expected to come in, but it did not come in. Why did it not come in? Let me check. Data source connection. So I come here, data source, change data source. Yeah, so the reason why it didn't come in is actually because of the range. So the range that we set is actually static. It did not expand automatically, which is an advantage with using tables. So if I had converted this to a table, that would automatically update. But now what I can do is to just change this to 1, add one more row. I click on OK. Once I click on OK, control cannot be changed. First disconnect the filter controls from the pivot table. Okay, this is what I would do. Don't worry. So I can come here. I can turn this entire guy into a table. If I turn this guy into a table, I come here to this guy. See if we'll be able to change the source. Table 1. I think that should be the name. What is wrong with you? Filtered. First disconnect the filter controls from the pivot table from other pivot table. Okay. So let's do this. Don't worry. God will not shame us. So I'll take this guy out. I think that's what the guy was saying. Come here, change data source, table 1. Got okay. What is happening, man? Let me see. Hold on. We have to do it. So I come here, table design. This is table 1. So I do something like this. Okay. Change data source, change data source. This. The guy is still not allowing me. The data source for the connected to physical code that are also connected to other pivot tables cannot be changed. Okay, let me try it on this guy to see. I think I understand what the guy is saying, but let me see. He's probably talking about the slicer that's already connected. Something else is wrong with this guy. Okay, so let me do this. Clear all filters. Clear all filters. Come here. You know how to create the sliders already, so it doesn't matter anymore. So come back here. This is here. This is here. Pivot table. Change data source. Change data source. Table one. Okay. Yeah, it worked now. So that was the reason. So it was those filters that was causing the issue. So now God no go share us, right? So you see now that Southwest has this ridiculous large number now. So if I go back to the data and I try to take out this row, if I take out this row, you see that we are less of a row. That extra row that I added is gone. So let's see how this plays out. If I come here back, so just keep your eye on this number here. If I come here to pivot table analyze and I say refresh, you see that it's back to how it was. So when your data updates, just ensure that you go to refresh your pivot table. That's all. All right. So we're good. We're good. We're good. Thank you, everybody. Let me see. We have 21 questions. So I'll attempt to answer as many as possible very quickly before we call it a wrap. And thank you to Kainde and Daniel for picking the questions. Why didn't the column heading of the percentage change like that of average? I think I've answered that. So the calculation is tied to the aggregations and not to the calculations. So the aggregations, if you're selecting a sum, a average, a mean, a max, the calculation is tied to them. So your column will reflect that. But if you're doing a calculation of percentage, your column header will not change, but we've seen how you're going to change that. Can you guide us on how to use percentage of option and how this works? So percentage of actually works super excellently. So let me see. Uh, it has an interesting use case. So let's see how that plays out. So let me see if I can build something quickly in just a second. So I'm just gonna bring this guy here. I'll pick this guy, Control A, Control C. I bring this guy here, and then I come in here. So I'll just change the region. Let me change that to trade date, and I'll take out quarters. So now here we have the year and the month. So let's assume that you want a report that tells you that sort of compares the current month to the previous month. So you want to know how you're doing in the business. When we go on in the year, is our future month better than the current month? Some sort of analysis like that. So it's called variance analysis. So that percentage difference of, or percentage difference of, or difference from, all of those will come in really handy here. And I'll need you to really explore those options because they are so much very powerful when working with pivot table, and they will bring out a lot of interesting stuff in your analysis. So if I click on any of these numbers here, remember that what we want to do is to say that when we compare what we realized in February against what we realized in January, which one is more? Did we grow in revenue or there was a dip in revenue? If I right click on this number and I come here to show values as, and I come here to percentage difference from, for example, if I come here to percentage difference from, I click that. So this comes here. And now the base field, which it will use to calculate, is the trade date column, which is excellent, and the base item. So there are two use cases for this. Let's say that in your own business, you have identified that there is a particular month that is most times the best month for you. Maybe it's July, that's where you make the most revenue. and you want to benchmark every other month against that particular month to see how close or how far are every other month from that particular month that you want to benchmark, then that month is what you select here. So if you benchmark every other month against February, you can leave it this way and I click on OK. And now what this tells us is that for this to make some sense to you, so let me just bring in revenue a second time. Okay, it's units sold. So I bring in the units sold a second time here. So now, what this tells you is that when you compare what we realized in terms of revenue or the units that we sold in January against what we sold in February, January was 4% less than what we sold in February. And it is when it is in May that we were actually able to surpass what we sold in February and like that. So this gives you some interesting analysis, especially when you want to benchmark a particular period against all other periods. So this is how this works. So I need you guys to really explore that option. There are a lot of good stuff that you can do from there. Why is the minimum of revenue grand total still remain the same and others was sum up? So minimum is not a sum. It's not a summation. So when you talk about sum, so what sum would do, let me see if the chart is here. Uh, yeah. So if you look at this, when you talk about sum is aggregated. The way the numbers are, it sums them up. For minimum is calculated every single line of the result that you see. So this number 13440 is the minimum revenue in 2014 for 2500 C model. And when you get to this subtotal level for 2014 total, what this 120 means is that in 2014, in all of the transactions that we made, the minimum we ever did was 120. And you see that that 120 actually ties to the 120 that we see here. So which already tells you that yes, the least revenue that we ever got in 2014 was 120, and that 120 was got in 3002 C model. So that is why. So minimum is not an aggregation. It recalculates it at every level of your data, of your report. So you need to know how to tie it to every single thing that you see on your report. Is it possible to have more than one field in a bucket? Yes, we did that already. Can we have an assignment to submit at the end of each class? Yes, you have a project that you do on Excel and that will come to you soon. When I added the trade date, what I have is the month, not the year. How can I get the year, please? We did that in the last class. Sorry about that. Why do some of the calculations turns to pound sign? Yes. So if I do this now, if you're looking at my screen and I do this, you see that all the numbers turn to pound sign. What that tells you is that the space, the width of the column is not enough to show the numbers. So what you need to do essentially is to come in between the two columns, the column that's affected and the next one. Once you get there, you get a crosshair, just double click, it auto expands or auto fits the column and you see all the numbers out. To record the daily sales of a business with working days from Monday to Saturday, how can we automatically enter dates while excluding all Sundays in that month? It is very, very possible, but it is beyond this class. You use some functions called array functions in Excel. You can research on them. How do we categorize based on keywords so that assuming we need to add without going to filter manually using contains option, we can only click on the keyword and we'll see the sum. I don't understand what you mean. Please help pin the attendance. Is it pound sign or what sign are you talking about? When? If it's around when we're talking about the formatting, then that is the pound sign. It's what some people call the naira sign. It is on the 3 key, but that is not the naira sign. It is pound sign. What about if number is not up to 9 digits and is 6 digits, which should be million? So you use 2 commas. Can we use the column of the slicer to be 5? Yes, if you have 5 items there, you can. You can keep expanding. I think I'm not sure what the maximum is, but maybe you can go up to like 10 or 10 columns or thereabouts, but you can explore. How do I select my chart to get the plus edge? Just click anywhere on the edge of the chart. How can we export our dashboard to PowerPoint for easy presentation? Or is there any other way So when you are done with your dashboard, you can copy that chart as it is and you take to PowerPoint and you paste. You have a number of options. You can paste as a link, or you can paste as an image, or you can paste as what other option is available. But again, is what you should bear in mind is when you paste as a link or you use the embed option, depending. So if you paste as a link, your PowerPoint is linked to that Excel workbook. So when there is an update on Excel, you'll see that update in PowerPoint immediately. If you paste as an image, your PowerPoint is disconnected from Excel. So when there is an update on your Excel, you need to recopy that particular chart and paste in PowerPoint. If you embed, what you're doing is that your chart and the data behind it is coming into PowerPoint. So if your data is much, it will blow out the size of your PowerPoint. So you need to bear that in mind. Is there any predefined rules that state how the chart should be placed while creating the dashboard, or is it that the placement of the chart, it doesn't matter? You can play with that. But again, is less is more. You are more after a clear presentation than you being after design. Please, when reducing the numbers, what is pound sign you use? Because pound sign, pound sign. So the sign on your three, number three on the keyboard, shift three, that will give you the pound sign. What if you have figure that's not up to billion on custom format? I already explained. In a situation where the data was given in billions like this, how do we write it in plain figures? If the original number was typed as 6.5 BN, there's no way you can turn that to 6,500. No, no, no. So it has to come as the plain number for you to convert it to this format. How can we copy Excel dashboard? Answered. When reducing the 9 digits? Answered. Or how are we going to write this answer already? At this point of learning, can I call myself? No, you cannot. What's the alternative for filters? You promised. I already did now. I'm unable to hide the region buttons. Right click on it, you see an option to hide all field buttons on chart. How can I separate the year from the row labels? Year from the row labels. I don't know what that means. My question is on the conditions Excel. Someone did the anniversary on our WhatsApp group, but I honestly don't understand. My question is on the conditions Excel. I don't understand that question. Sorry. So let me see if there are more things on the chart here. A second. Uh, a lot has flown up. My question is on nesting function. How can I go then combine it to more functions? It's by practice. How can we link up all the tables for final analysis? What do you mean by link up, Femi? My question is in the conditions Excel. Someone did the anniversary. I don't understand. I read that already. Conditionals Excel 3, sir. What do you mean by that? I'm unable to hide the region button. The right click is not working. It will work. You are right clicking the wrong thing. If you right click properly, go to that particular button, do a right click. So if I come here, I do Alt F1. You come to this button. If you can see the screen, if you come to this button and I do a right click, you see this option, hide all your buttons on chart. So it's there. When doing text cleaning, do we have to create a new sheet? So what I advise is that you always keep your raw data in case somebody comes someday and they say that you are working with the wrong data. So you tell them that this is the raw data as it is, and then you create a new worksheet with the duplicated data so that you do your cleaning on that. It's just so that you avoid stories that tell. Um, how can I add more than one table on the pivot table? More than one table on the pivot table. Sorry, I'm not. My English is not so good, so I may not be able to understand some things. But if you can be more explicit, that's super. If you can do a presentation on Excel, why do we need Power BI? You ask when you get to the Power BI class. You don't need how to use the old slicer on new chart added. I already did that. The next anniversary is under conditional. What's the issue with next anniversary? Link up, I mean the complete data set. And the complete data set is what all the pivot tables are on now, right? Or am I missing something? Can we get the shortcuts on keyboard used so far and other ones? You need to review all the classes. I don't have it typed anywhere. Modupe, you don't understand what? We have to highlight and delete to clear a data on a column before we can take it out. Do we have to highlight and delete to clear a data on a column? If you want to delete the data on a column, a couple of options. You can highlight the entire column. You right click and then you delete. Or I highlight the entire column and press Ctrl minus, that will delete it. Whenever I try to pivot the unit sold against revenue, it always gives the sum of both. What do I do? That is the default. You didn't start the class with us. Go and rewatch. When reducing the 9 digits to billion, what about if the next digit is 6 figure, which is how are we going to write the custom format to reflect all those differences? Oh, sorry. When you get to maybe SS1 or SS2, you will learn that. Charles, you want to go and buy a car? Good. Bye bye. Take care. Bye the grandchildren. Um, any other question? Any other question? The the Excel function 3 does not correlate with all your thoughts. I don't understand what you mean. What function can we use to find next anniversary? Sorry. Go and find out. Go and find out. So, but one of the functions that would help you is the edate function. So if you come in here, if you do edate function, this function is used to shift dates forward or backwards. What type of SQL are we using, sir? Microsoft SQL. I believe Microsoft SQL. Should we proceed on our dashboard? Of course. How can we send it, sir? Send it to who, Koyun? I don't need you to send it. You want me to look at how many thousands dashboard? That should replace my full-time job. You use edate, but you don't understand. That's why you're an analyst. You need to research. Sorry. So do a little bit of research. You wouldn't get everything in the class. But I gave you enough foundation, and then I believe you should be able to do it. Take the slicer again. Sorry. Go and watch the recording. We have 3 minutes left. What we were taught on the YouTube is different from the Excel functions 3 files that was sent. Yes, the reason behind it was explained. How do we make it a pie chart? It's simple. So if you click on any charts that you have, and you want to turn this into a pie chart, just go here to design, change chart type, and then select pie. That will give you this. Click on OK. So that's how to change it. Change whatever chart. How do I take the graph to the other sheet? Sorry, praise. Watch the recording. Any other thing, any other thing, any other thing? 2 more minutes. Balikis, why are you laughing? What function can we use to find the next bar now? How many people want to ask me this question? Ask something else, guys. There are a lot to ask. I know they chop knuckles. Zola Kara. Sorry, Moses. Any other thing, any other thing, any other thing? Akara no day, Charles say, yeah, sorry. You'll sleep hungry tonight. Can you continue the rest of the class? No, I cannot. I have my bosses. My bosses will come around. So I'm the youngest tutor in the class. So that's why you know how it happens in the family that the youngest guy will be asked to go collect his food first because they know that he will be the one to collect the least food. So if the glutton is asked to collect his food first, you know what will happen to the rest. So that's why I was pushed for it. So I've done my part, and I leave the rest to my bosses to continue with you guys. Pay attention to whatever you guys will be taught. You sure would learn a great deal. And last thing that crossed my mind to talk to you about quickly is that you need to be open-minded, and especially because of the fact that all of you guys here, you don't see yourselves, you don't know who is who. I can tell you for free that we have very senior people on this call. A few persons reached out to me on LinkedIn. I when I looked at saw their status, it's quite amazing that some of them joined this class. So the fact that you don't see yourself, the fact that this is fully virtual, please mind how you address people, mind how you talk to people. Don't be like me that calls everyone mechanic. That might not be the best thing to do, but again, it is what it is. So And maybe because I actually needed something like 2 or 3 days ago. So it's from a school, and then the contact that I spoke with, she told me eventually that she attended one of my trainings, a similar one like this, the last call that we had. If probably I had abused her during that call, or I had not composed myself, maybe for whatever reason, she probably wouldn't have assisted me with that. So you don't know who you will be meeting. You don't know who would pick on your name. You don't know who has already registered some things in their minds that, oh, this is how this guy is, and somehow you are getting to meet again somewhere that you don't know. So please, you are here to learn. Be focused. If anyone is trying to distract you, someone has said that you can put off the chat, so you can do that so you are not distracted. Focus, get the best out of this. You are not paying. You think you are not paying, but actually you are paying, because you're paying with the data that you're attending the class with. You're paying with your time for you to be here. If this same time, the 2 hours that you spend on this call, if you go to use it at a mechanic workshop, you probably will make like two, maybe 2,000 naira within that 2 hours. So you guys are actually paying. Don't see it like this is free. This is never free. This is, you have paid your own price. The incubator orb has paid a lot. I can tell you for free. They have paid a lot for this to happen. So you need to, the way to pay them back with good is to ensure that you guys focus. You guys do this excellently. You put your minds to it, and you accord yourselves the best of regards. You never know where you will meet again. You never know what would be where you want something next. All right. Thanks a lot, everyone, for attending this part of the course. From tomorrow, you'll be hearing somebody else, by God's grace, who will begin to talk to you about something else. Yeah, rounding up Excel for now, it doesn't necessarily mean that you should make this the end of your Excel journey. You need to now begin to put all of the pieces together, practice, practice, practice. That's the way you can get the best out of what you've learned so far. Ensure you practice as much as you can, and you continue with the learnings that will come after now. Thanks again, guys. Hopefully, we catch some other times. Bye for now.